wanna be the one. I wanna be the one who loves you.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What's New in the Blue, Michigan DECA's podcast, where we bring the hottest tips, best practices, and key insights you need to know to master your competition all the way to ICDC. I'm today's host, your Vice President of Leadership Development. My name is Brianna Barbary, and we have a very special episode today, not with one special guest, but two very special guests. First, I'll be talking one-on-one with a longtime DECA enthusiast and ICDC judge, Alex Mellott, where we'll find exactly where your judges will be looking for during your competition. Then, our director of competitive events will make his second appearance this season to give us some very important information how to export and upload your written events. So, whether you're doing a role play or a written event this year, we have something for you in this episode. So, stay tuned till the very end. First, I'd like to bring out Alex Mellott.
Hello, Bree. Pleasure to chat with you all.
Yes, of course. So first off, welcome to What's New in the Blue, our podcast. We're excited to have you here today. But before we dive into the nitty-gritty of competition, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to DECA?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a DECA member. I'm going to age myself doing this here. Freshman in high school in 2010 and graduated in 2014. So, God, that makes me doing this now, what, 15 years I've been involved in DECA. So do the math from there, all of you. I'm not going to feel old for myself today, but Pennsylvania DECA member. My last year in DECA, I was also a state officer with my state officer executive team. So really valuable experience. Loved every part of it. So Bree, great to be able to share the state officer stage here. I was fortunate in that I actually qualified for ICDC all 4 years when I was a member, placed top two my first 2 years in, I did a role play event at the time, retail merchandising. And then first in the state my last 2 years and top 10 at ICDC my final year. So definitely saw things from the competitor side, loved that angle. And honestly, DECA just taught me so much about the professional world. It gave me the starting block that I needed to, start my own company, to succeed in the professional world. So I've been giving back to DECA every year since. I've been working with various different state associations, giving back at the state, local, and international level, and have judged pretty much every ICDC for the last 8 years nonstop. It's something that I absolutely love doing. I love being able to meet members like yourself, and see things from the other side of the table, which, believe it or not, is actually more stressful on our side of the table than it is for you. But that's my DECA story. That's how I've gotten involved, and that's how I've stayed involved.
It's great. You're setting a really high standard for me. I'm also in retail merchandising this year.
Ooh.
So that's you're really putting it on the table today. I think every DECA member has experienced that kind of like nerve-wracking moment walking into a role play and facing their judge for the first time. So I kind of want to talk about that. So what should competitors keep in mind during those first 10 seconds of walking in to meet the judge?
Yeah, I think as nervous as you are, I think the really important thing is that your judges are also equally, if not more, nervous. So, typically when the judging day starts, all the judges are going to meet, typically they have a table set up for us in whatever conference room or event hall that we're doing this in. And a lot of these judges are brand new. They've never done this before. They've never had anything like this experience. And they're going through this and they're thinking, well, oh my God, what do I need to do? Like, I've never done this before. What are the standards that I need to do? What types of questions I ask? How should I talk to the person? Should I play along with the role that they're kind of acting out? So all of that's going through the judge's head because they also want to make a great positive experience for you too. So I think the first thing really is to set the judge at ease. When you start playing into the role, if you're doing a role play and you're assuming the role of, a marketing exec or something, getting into that role, being friendly, conversing with the judge, helping them let their guard down from their nerves makes it a much more fun experience than, each side kind of being tense and figuring out, okay, how are we going to get through this?
Yeah, I love that advice. I'll definitely take that in for states. So now in Michigan, we made handshakes optional again this year. If someone chooses not to shake hands, what's the best way to still establish a professional connection in the like type of handshake way?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just, the standard things of maintaining eye contact, whether it's, if you have materials, for example, that you bring with the judge, maybe you've got a business card that you place on on the judge's desk or table as an alternative to shaking their hand. Maybe you do like some kind of fist bump if you do want to have like a little personal touch with them. Again, kind of vibe based on what the judge is feeling. If they're younger, they might approve that. If you're working with someone who's kind of an older stature, they may not appreciate that. But any kind of personal touch that you can do to just establish that, it's safe, that it's comfortable, and that you're creating some type of connection. I will tell you the biggest thing that I always love for a judge that's really just an easy thing to establish like a connection and credibility is you'd be surprised how many people don't ask, hey, do you mind if I take a seat? And just pull out the chair and then just immediately sit down. Something like that, really simple. It's just a way to kind of get over that initial awkwardness of those first 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So once that introduction is all out of the way and the nerves, competitors have to jump right into their role play. Aside from covering the performance indicators, what do you look for as a judge in the role play in the beginning?
So I'll talk about individuals and then teams because I think there's different strategies for each. Individuals, I think first and foremost, understand whether you're going to be with one judge or two. I have seen this vary depending on the competition. Sometimes at states and state competitions, there's been two judges for a role play. Although I see it more commonly at ICDC now, where they'll put, two judges to a role play table than at the state level. It's really difficult as an individual to kind of maintain eye contact and work with each other and try to make sure that you're addressing each judge individually. So I would say, make sure that you're kind of spending equal time with that. Same concept applies when you're as a team. Good team chemistry is that you know how to counterbalance each other's ideas. I talk about this particular performance indicator, then I soft hand off to my teammate, and my teammate knows how to, continue the conversation. But also little things that when you have a team dynamic, you can really tell when teammates work well or when they don't. The best team role plays that I've ever done has been when you, as a teammate, is struggling trying to answer a question or talk about something, and the other team member has this innate instinct and instantly knows, okay, they're struggling, I'll jump in, I'll help take care of things. That type of dynamic is really important for me to witness as a judge because it's the same type of dynamic that you're going to deal with in the workplace. I view everything whenever I judge is what do I expect as an entry level standard for someone coming into the role? And not necessarily knowledge base, although that's important, but more about stature and characteristics. Are you coming in with a professional mindset? Are you coming in understanding what the judge needs to see and what matters to them, especially based on their role? The things that matter to a judge in their role as, say, the CEO of a company are going to be different than, say, the marketing executive. The marketing executive might want more in the weeds, whereas the CEO might want to know what I call the bluff, the bottom line up front. What's the high level, what I need to know in order to make a business critical decision?
I love that advice. I just actually learned about like going more in depth on like who I'm talking to and like how
Mhm.
I should talk to them. So yeah, I really that's a really good advice for all members.
And
Um,
I'll add one other thing too, that typically judges are asked to hold their questions until the very end. However, it's a really good strategy after you get through, like, let's say you have 5 performance indicators. You go through and you're starting to talk through and you get through two. Pause for a second and say, Mr. Judge, Mrs. Judge, do you have any questions for me so far? It's a really good way to kind of help flow a natural way of conversation so it doesn't feel like you're just sitting there lecturing because it does feel kind of awkward sometimes. I knew that from a competitor standpoint where I feel like I'm just talking to the judge straight for 10 minutes and I'm not giving them a chance to breathe.
yeah, yeah. And obviously, you need a strong close to end off your role play or your written event. So I want to ask you as an ICDC judge, like kind of what a strong close would need to look like for you or to be a winner possibly.
Always suggest a follow-up meeting. Suggest, hey, we've had some great conversation today. I'd really like to consider, let's schedule a follow-up meeting to talk through everything. A really cool kind of businessy strategy that you can use is, You take things that the judge is maybe asking questions on, or things that maybe you don't necessarily know the answer to. And, you've got that scratch paper that you get with you from coming in. Say, you know what? I'm going to jot that right down as an action item for me to take care of. And, we can schedule a follow-up next week and we can go through that when I have more details from the team.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's a great breakdown, but of course, the most important part is competitors need to hit their KPIs or the key performance indicators. That's what's mostly scoring up your role plays and written events. Can you talk about how judges use KPIs to score role play?
Yep. So it all goes back to, again, if you look at a judge's scoring rubric, there's the different levels. It's all the way from little to no value, all the way up to exceed expectations. When you judge it based on that, keep in mind that this is not necessarily being judged as what I am as a judge and my performance and my qualifications that I currently have. Because you may be talking to a judge and working with someone who's been in this industry for 20, 30 years. The expectation that's set is what would we expect of an entry level associate coming in to this particular role? And what I'm looking for more than ever is your ability to give me a high level, what is this? Why does it matter? Give me a couple examples and connect it some way back to the case. There's been a shift that I've noticed in my time in DECA where when I first started, we were so focused on solving the case study. And solving the case study meant we might not necessarily hit all the performance indicators. But then we've made a drastic shift, and we're now so focused a lot of times on just hitting the performance indicators that we don't actually solve the problem back to the case. So again, the way that I approach this is identify the KPI, explain one sentence what it means, give me an example, and then connect it back to the case. How do I solve that particular area of the case?
That's some really good advice, especially for some first year DECA competitors. And speaking of them, before we wrap it up, what's one final piece of advice you'd give to a first year DECA competitor heading to their first state competition?
Yeah, so a couple things. First and foremost, take this experience extremely well. Take advantage of every opportunity you get outside of competition to network with members, to connect with business professionals, exhibitors, vendors, workshop presenters. Introduce yourself and start building your personal network. Your personal network is going to be the thing that advances you in your career. I still keep in touch with people that I met during my career in DECA that have helped me get places. Little fun fact, Marshall and I served on the exact same team, a social media team at ICDC in Atlanta in 2014, and we still stay connected and in touch. It's those kind of connections that you build with the friends that you make at conferences, with the business partners that you meet. You never know who's going to help get you your first internship, your first job, or who may introduce you to a connection at a university or a college that can help expand your knowledge and give you opportunities. So seek out all of that, regardless of whether you win, you lose, if you kill your role play, if you absolutely suck at it. Remember, the broader thing that you're gaining is experience. And DECA members, I love hiring because I know the skills that you've been through, and it's skills that I can't teach anybody else.
This is great, great advice, and it's super helpful, especially to someone like me. But I want to just thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us today, helping Michigan DECA members prepare for the upcoming state competition in March. We really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
Our next guest might be a familiar face to some of you committed listeners. Make his second appearance on our podcast, this time to bring you some best practices when downloading and submitting your written event. Marshall Conley, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, I just want to say a couple things first. I was gonna date myself, Alex, but thanks for doing that for me. And then next thing, Bree, if Alex and I are ever on a podcast together, slot me first because that's just gonna be a tough one to follow. So, but really appreciate Alex being here. Um, so yeah, I just wanted to bring some attention to a couple things. Not necessarily anything changing, but just some best practices for our written event entries, as you're getting close to that submission date. Primarily around exporting and uploading your projects. Last year there was just some inconsistencies in project naming and project export. So this is primarily for Canva users. We are really pushing our Adobe Express partnership this year. We want these written events to be, designed and exported from Adobe Express. And if you do use Adobe Express, the things that I'm about to talk about don't matter to you. But if you are a Canva user and you are building your written event on Canva, we need you to export when you get done and you're about to submit and you're exporting, the PDF print option is not compatible with Turnitin. Turnitin, it does not provide a readable language for Turnitin to evaluate. So you need to export your projects using PDF standard. This will allow us to do a plagiarism and AI check. But not to say that PDF print is going to get you away from that plagiarism or AI check. We are going to chase you down for a new copy, which may delay the screening process and may result in penalties. The other thing I want to suggest is the naming of your projects before you upload them, before you give them to your advisor to upload. We're really looking for your event acronym. So if I was doing franchise business plan, it would be EFG. My name, so EFG, Marshall Conley, and then my chapter name. I was from Tuscola Technology Center, so I would be EFG, Marshall Conley, Tuscola Technology Center. And feel free if there's a common shorthand for your chapter to use that shorthand. I also want to talk about kind of how penalty points work. That's when you upload that paper to DLG, your advisor uploads that paper. We're going to then screen it and apply some penalty points before you get to the state conference. Some of the most common penalty points we're seeing still is missing or incomplete statement of assurances. In the statement of assurances, everyone who had any involvement in that project needs to sign that project. So if your team is 3, there needs to be 3 signatures on that statement of assurance. The other most common one is exceeding page limits. The page limit is a hard limit. So just keep in mind you want to keep things concise, redesign if you have to, but make sure you're within that page limit. Incorrect page numbering, that's a pretty common one that's going to get you a penalty points, especially when you're realizing, oh, maybe this section would be better here, and you just move a page up. You got to renumber that page if the software you're using doesn't do that for you. And failure to include a big bibliography when required is something we're still seeing from time to time. So make sure you include that bibliography before you upload it. We're not seeing often as much handwritten notes, graphs, charts, and submissions anymore with the advent of Canva and these online, very accessible platforms. But do keep in mind there are no creativity points in DECA. As much as some of us would love to see that get implemented, anything scribbled in will earn you a penalty point. So keep it fresh, keep it clean, and best of luck this year. One more thing I do want to say is that you can't recycle projects from last year. I know it's a little late in the game for this, but if you did a franchise business plan last year on McDonald's, submitting one about Burger King and swapping out the names, it's going to get you disqualified. In the same way plagiarism would. I'm someone who appreciates constant improvement. I consider myself, lifelong learner, but I don't think that's what's being achieved if you're just swapping names out. So anything I missed, Bree?
I would say one thing that or at least because we use Canva at my school, so I guess if you use Adobe Express, it wouldn't matter, but it's like your formatting, because like when you print it out, it will like change and it will like cut off like the sides. So just like making sure like not everything's to the edge of the page so it doesn't like cut out anything.
That's a good point. They do have to be 8.5 by 11. So if you're on Canva and it's not printing that way, it's not going to be that way digitally either. So. Yeah, other than that, I really appreciate you having me on here. Appreciate Alex joining us to drop some incredible insight. That was amazing. I wish I would have had a conversation with Alex before I went into my competition as a member.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you, Marshall, and thank you again, Alex, for joining us today. This was a very information-dense episode, but they are uploaded to YouTube, so you can, always come back and rewind videos or slow it down. But we hope everyone is able to take away something from this episode. Next week, we're going to be discussing the state conference and kind of what to expect there. You will not want to miss this episode. But thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in, as always, and don't forget to be the one. We'll see you next week.